Dr. Jackson for inviting me today for this very important colloquium. And I am honored to be here to share with all of you my journey and experiences and lessons that I've learned over the last 14 years teaching in urban schools, over 1,700 students worldwide, successfully teaching Black males in urban settings in Atlanta, Brooklyn, New York, Las Vegas, Tampa, Washington, D.C., Cape Town, and Johannesburg, South Africa. In each of these cities, in which I've taught in public schools, and now I teach in a charter school, I've witnessed, learned, and contributed to the productive, exceptional, and effective education of Black males. Within each of these urban schools, I've been a successful teacher because I've known how to speak to the hearts and souls of Black students, and especially Black male students. Over the last 14 years, I've continuously reminded myself that before my students are those everyday titles like students, children, son, brother, friend, they, like myself, are human beings. And they were born with gifts that are to be used to fulfill their life's purpose. As a teacher, I am charged with two tasks. Number one, learning and revealing and nurturing the genius of our children, of our Black children. Showing them that they too are a part of a continuum of excellence and that they were born with genius and passions that they have to use to actualize their purpose in life. Two, I'm charged with honoring our Black males' humanity, spiritually, socially, emotionally, politically, culturally, and academically. Acknowledging the humanity of Black males inspires me to recognize their spirits, their realities, and the effects of racism and its many systems, and how racism affects their ability to learn, and the development of their intrinsic motivation to learn and succeed. To address these effects of racism head on, I implement a program called Life Orientation. And right here, this is a picture of what life orientation looks like. And in a nutshell, it's a circle, and it's a daily class with my students. And I learned this when I taught in South Africa. I taught at a school called LEAP Science and Maths School in Cape Town 1 year and Johannesburg the next year. And now we use this in my school where I teach, and I teach now at Howard University Middle School of Mathematics and Science. Life orientation is a unique class that's structured to help students find their voice, and it provides a safe space for them to share, promote honesty without worries of being judged. It's a place for caring and holding each other accountable. Life orientation allows students to reclaim their humanity in the face of power, class, and economic oppression. Both Howard University Middle School of Mathematics and Science and LEAP Science and Math School believe that reclaiming humanity is a fundamental requirement for student learning and success. Humanity can be reclaimed through non-judgment, trust, honesty, courage, freedom, having those difficult conversations, growing, and making healthy choices. These are a few of our school's code of conduct values that permeate our school's culture, curriculum, and lessons in their daily life orientation classes. In LO, that's what we call life orientation, teachers and students model how to care for one another, how to hold one another accountable for their choices, how to be responsible for their choices, and how to give freely and unconditionally to others. In LO classes, students and facilitators have those difficult conversations about racism and oppression, death, AIDS, gender issues, sexuality, drugs, abandonment, and career goals. The entire school engages fully, deeply, and honestly in those difficult conversations and all the ways that oppression manifests itself in our society and in our school. LO is a safe space where students, faculty, and staff courageously share their feelings, which are almost always connected to one form of oppression or another. Life orientation allows faculty and staff to also examine and raise awareness of their deeply rooted feelings and beliefs of Black males. And these are Black teachers. All of our teachers in our building are Black. 50% of our teachers are Black males. And yet we do have some issues around our perceptions of Black children, of Black male students. And so in LO, this is with students, but we do it with the adults as well, we hold each other accountable and we dig deep into comments that are made that may seem innocent, but really there is some bias there because those biases show up in our classrooms and the children pick up on it. There's a specific way and unique approach in conducting LO, and it's empowering. It's liberating, strengthening, and it's healthy. Students in LEAP and in MS Squared, that's what we call our school, MS Squared, develop an intrinsic desire to work hard in all situations. So as we meet up every day in LO, and the students are taught to push each other with hard and difficult situations, they carry that lesson, they carry those experiences in other realms of their lives, including academic work. And they push each other and say, work hard, work hard. They are willing to learn from their mistakes, share, grow, and succeed academically, emotionally, and responsibly. The students, parents, and faculty and staff of these schools take risks because it's a safe place. This is our code of conduct, very simple, but as we go through LO, we are constantly holding each other accountable, so if we could tell someone is not being fully honest or not sharing as much as they could, we'll refer to our code of conduct, which will say share as much as possible or be honest, admit mistakes, and this is constantly referred to on a daily basis all throughout the day. And so this is our code of conduct, this is what we live by. Students hold us accountable, the teachers, and it's a very empowering place to work. This is a productive way to legitimize and validate the impacts of oppression. Many of our children are taught not to speak. Not to speak. They are to listen and not to be heard. And what this does for our children is it makes them suppress how they really feel about when a teacher humiliates them in class. So they have to take that. Or whatever they're going through in their lives at home. They can't talk about it. And that impacts them emotionally. And then we see it in the classroom when they're not doing homework or they're not engaged. Many times teachers will say, you know, I don't know why so-and-so's not doing his work, and just 5 minutes ago the teacher just berated him in front of everyone. And it's no secret, but if children are taught that they can't share in a respectful way, but if they are taught that they can't share, then they sit with those feelings. And then essentially they are oppressed. They can't speak, they're silenced. And so what we do is open up that voice for our students and let them know, no, you can speak. And we want you to speak up for yourself. The life orientation class provides Black males an opportunity to feel to feel a sense of safety, control, comfort, and freedom. And it helps to develop a positive self-worth, which activates their desire to achieve emotional and academic success. We refuse to ignore what our students feel and experience. We refuse to ignore the inferiority complex that many of our Black males have. They have it. It manifests itself in many different ways. But if we don't allow them to talk about what's going on in their heads, it will stay there, no matter how much you talk to them, no matter how much you reprimand them. They need to have an opportunity to share why they believe or feel they are inferior. LO allows us to address them safely and in a productive manner. We also, in terms of spiritually, we encourage our students to be involved with community responsibility. Now, these pictures are actually in South Africa, and this is in the Langa Township. But we also do community work in Washington, D.C. as well. But this is students building homes in their community. And so what they do is they have community responsibility every 2 weeks, and they go into the community, they target a problem that they see, and they do something about it. They're not waiting for anyone, they're not blaming anyone, they're taking full responsibility for their community. And so that's a school, not a school, but an after-school program that they've started for children to come and get tutoring, building homes, and this is what they call a creche, which is a daycare, and then they've built, they've created a garden, and that's me hugging some kids in a creche down there. And so they go into their communities all over and take it back. They said, you know, we don't want the crime, we don't want the violence, we're going to do something about it. And so the students are empowered to, and these students go into schools that are feeding into their high schools, or we go into elementary schools that feed into our middle schools, so that we have a relationship, and so the new students will know this is what we value. These are our values in our school. I acknowledge the humanity of Black males and empower them politically. I make sure that Black males I teach know of the systems in place that decide who, what, when, why, and how certain resources are distributed and why they are not. In this sense, I operate as a political change agent in the classroom that in essence works in opposition to the system that employs me. Through various lessons and discussions and activities, I encourage Black male students to be critical of how their parents, teachers, and Black males are treated by the school system. I teach them to challenge the system through subversive pedagogy that struggles against the permanence of racism, sexism, and classism. Black males must see themselves as political change agents and be empowered to use their voice and their genius politically, spiritually, mentally, and academically. I arm them with this knowledge so that they do not become victims, but instead empowered human beings that know the benefits and responsibility of self-determination. Every single year, I start the school year by teaching 6 words: stereotypes, prejudice, inequality, internalize, inferiority complex, and reject. We spend an extensive amount of time studying these words through various means. Such strategies and resources I use include common stereotypes of Black males, student-created skits of their experiences with stereotypes of Black males, and subsequent prejudice, newspaper articles, magazines, movies, rappers, athletes, billboards, Census Bureau statistics, and we provide examples of ways people reject others, but also, and worse off, how they reject themselves because of these stereotypes. These very emotional activities set the stage for my entire school year by providing students with the vocabulary that they've needed for years to articulate and validate their experiences in society. After these lessons, students have mixed emotions that range from anger, sadness, and humiliation. Many are outraged once they realize that they've been taught to hate themselves and to hate each other, and are open to learn more about themselves and learn other lies that society has perpetuated about our people. Once the stage is set, Black males are ignited and hungry for more knowledge and opportunities to make changes around them. I acknowledge my students' humanity and inspire them culturally. And this takes me back to my personal experiences. I'm a native of Washington, D.C., and from the age of 3 through middle school, I attended an African-centered school in D.C. called Roots Activity Learning Center. And at this school, we were taught from an African psychological perspective. The pedagogy was different, period. Our content was different. The content was African-centered, the pedagogy was African-centered, it was holistic versus dichotomous, it was kinesthetic, rhythmic, lots of symbols and images. We could express our Africanisms linguistically, our clothes, our hair, rhythmically, body, everything, without feeling inferior or ashamed. We knew our heroes and our sheroes, and our inventions and contributions to mathematics, science, technology, medicine, philosophy, religion, all of the above. We were proud to be Africans. In addition to this African-centered curriculum and pedagogy, every morning we sang songs that uplifted our people. We sang songs like, "We are the roots, oh yeah, of the flowers of tomorrow, oh yeah." So we loved ourselves. And there was this one song that we sang, responsibility, responsibility, I can't sing. Responsibility goes hand in hand with freedom. So we knew every single day, yes, we have this freedom, and with it, we are responsible. We are responsible to give back. We are responsible to share what we know and to help our community. Whatever we do with our genius, it is our responsibility to give back to our community. I bring all of these Africanisms to my classes today because even though their conscious memories may not remember, their ancestral memories do, and they love it. I bring in the call and response, the ago, ame, and as soon as I say ago, ame, it's over. I don't have to spend 10 minutes getting my class together. Ago, ashe, thank you, and it's over. And so their memory, and they love it. They start smiling just from ago, ame, and they don't even know where it came from. But I use the rhythm, I use the relationships, because that's who we are. I'm also influenced by my experience at Spelman College. While I was there, I took a course at Morehouse called African Psychology with Dr. Timothy Moore. You know that? Yes. Awesome class, right? And in this class, I was, of course, introduced to the research of Dr. Wade Nobles and Dr. Naeem Akbar. I got to go over to Georgia State and sit in the great Dr. Asa Hilliard's classes. And I also was introduced to the work of Dr. Edwin Nichols, who completely changed my life because he gave me the theory, he gave me the research to why Roots Activity Learning Center, this school in Washington, D.C. that was opened in 1977, was like a machine in D.C. Anybody that went there was graduating 2 to 3 grade levels ahead, going to high school at 14, and I mean, we were like, what is this about? I always thought it was because they taught me to love being an African. I was like, yeah, I feel good. And then when I took this course and I read Dr. Nichols' research, I realized, no, there was actually a method to this. There was some theory behind it. And what Dr. Nichols talked about was that there are different logic systems, different epistemological styles, and different axiology, values for different groups. So like Europeans, Asians, Africans, Native Americans. And he broke down these differences amongst these groups. And so for axiology, which is values, the number one value for African people is relationships. The number one value in his research for Europeans was the object. And so like a grade, a diamond ring, whatever, any type of object was the number one value, versus for African people, relationships was. And he went into detail where that theory came from, lack of resources in this area, abundance of resources in this area, so on and so forth. But when I translated that into the classroom, and I see teachers having a really hard time with Black children in the beginning of the school year, and they just rush into a lesson, and every year I said, did you get to know them? Did you talk to them? Did you ask them what they did this summer? Did you laugh with them? Did you say hi? What'd you do? No, we had a lesson. I wanted them to get out their paper, da 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 da. And with our babies, that relationship is key. That relationship is key. If you don't invest that time, and if it's not genuine, and they don't feel you really care about them, it's over. And it's really just that simple. Once they know that you care, once they know that you got their backs, oh, you have them all year long. And all you gotta do is say, I go. Okay. That's it. And it really is that simple. I know I sound simplistic, but it really is that simple. And so he goes on to talk about epistemological styles of African people. I mentioned them before: rhythm, symbols. When we look at the ancient, when we go into ancient Kemet, and you see all of the symbols that symbolize mathematical formulas and understandings of the universe. Symbols were big for our people, not just in Kemet, but all over Africa. Symbols are very important. Rhythm, imagery, metaphors. We speak in metaphors all day. And I don't know if we even recognize that, but it's so beautiful. I love to hear us talk. We never really talk straight. We just always in metaphors. Very, very African. And then he talks about the logic being diunital versus dichotomous. The whole, seeing the whole first. And this is very critical for Black males, because Black girls, Black females, make this transition to dichotomy earlier. They make that transition by first grade. Boys don't until around third grade. But by then, they've been so frustrated in class trying to learn from the parts to the whole, when our brains learn from the whole to the parts. Now they've been labeled, right? Behavioral problems, special ed, something's wrong with them. When really, in fact, nothing is wrong with them. You're just not teaching them the way their brain works. So I was excited to learn all of this because I had concrete examples. I could really tell them how we were taught in roots, in elementary school, using, you know, a playground bar to count distance over time with our bodies so that it was kinesthetic. That's the other one, epistemological style. So I could give concrete examples of how rhythm was used and how imagery was used and how it was so easy and how we went from the whole to the parts by using manipulatives and using our bodies. So I had concrete examples and I was so excited about this. Let's see. Cultural relevance. Cultural relevance uses students' culture in order to maintain their culture and to transcend the negative effects of the dominant culture. The negative effects of the dominant culture are brought about by not seeing one's history, culture, or background represented in textbooks or curriculum, and not acknowledging different cultural logic systems, values, and epistemological styles in the classroom. And so we talk about cultural relevance all the time, but it's deeper than, you know, showing up in some kente cloth, right? And I can't stand the superficial representations of cultural relevance. It's deeper than that. It's knowing culturally how our minds have acquired knowledge for thousands of years. It's knowing how culturally we won't be open to learning until we have a relationship with you. And you have to recognize that and honor those people, our people. Culturally, including our contributions to mathematics. And I bring this up here, I'm going to define mathematics. Mathematics is an intellectual and scientific tool created and invented by African people for the purpose of systematically studying, learning, and comprehending nature. So I have up here the lunar cycle and the menstrual cycle. Now, I have the Ishango bone and the Bobo bone. Anybody know about these bones? No? Okay. More else? Okay, so these bones are dated 37,000 years old, and they came from Swaziland in Africa. And the great thing, the interesting thing about these bones is that they have the 28 notches on them, and then at the end there's a quartz stone, which is used for what? What do we use quartz for? Quartz, time. Remember that back in the day? The watch? I know we don't have watches anymore, but okay. So what this people have deduced from this is that African people were using mathematics, forms of mathematics, using the notches to calculate time and using the lunar cycle and marking the different phases of the moon. Now, at the top there, we have some deities from Kemet. We have Tahuti on the right, and he's depicting balance. And this is just a breakdown of what I've already discussed about Dr. Nichols. African logic, diurnal, holistic. And I bring this up because this is very important in lesson planning for those of us that are in the classroom. Understanding how to write a phenomenal lesson plan, we have to know how our brains work. We have to know what engages black boys especially. And so I bring this up: African logic, diurnal, holistic, interdisciplinary, epistemological styles, relationships, cultural visibility, seeing themselves in our curriculum. The highest values relationship, I'm just going to breeze through this because I've already gone through this. Those are my students. Relationships with parents, another part. And all of these are different strategies that I use to help. It's a holistic approach. It's not just with the black boy in my class. He also responds by knowing that I'm invested in his entire family. So we do home visits. We are connected. We talk to them all the time. My cell phone, I've been emailing this entire time I'm here. Emailing parents, calling parents. They know we are present, they know we care, and that goes so far with our children. Because like we always say, it takes a village to raise a child, but then we turn off our phones and don't really want to invest the time. But you do have to do that. It's a cultural thing. Inviting parents into the school to help. It's not moving.
Enter.
Okay. This is something that our boys really love. They love challenges. They love mathematics. So when I'm teaching history, which is my subject that I teach, I find that I have to include mathematics to engage my boys. And they actually told me this in 2007. We were studying the Silk Road, and I just happened to make up a word problem around the Silk Road, and the boys just went bananas in class. They loved it. I mean, they were running up to the desk, showing me their problems, and they said, "You should do this more often. You should bring math in here more often." I said, "Really?" So after that, math, it was. They love it. But so this is an example of, the Great Pyramid, going inside. And so I taught them the Fibonacci sequence and, taught them how, it was named after this Italian mathematician named Fibonacci. But how come we can go in here and find the golden ratio and find the Fibonacci sequence inside of the Great Pyramid? And so then we studied the different ways the Fibonacci sequence is shown in our nature around us. And so then I have them think critically. How do you think these people used, nature and mathematics to understand the world that they lived in and to create monuments? And so it leads to engaging discussions, but also understandings. And this is how I write my lesson plans. So because I understand the African logic of being holistic and cross-curricular being important, I'll have a topic, and then I think of all the different ways that I can present this knowledge to my students so that they are thinking deeply about it. It helps with retention, obviously, but also it creates critical thinking that they really love. It's that rigor. It's not that surface knowledge that bores them to tears. And again, examples of symbolic and imagery in classes. I don't know if you all did diagramming as a kid. Anybody? Okay. And so they stopped that. There's no longer, they don't do diagramming anymore. But diagramming and symbols and other images like this was very important for our understanding, and we don't do it as much as we should. And of course, multiple intelligences, again, making a web and coming up with different ways to teach a lesson so that you are engaging all of the learners in your classroom. Demand critical thinking, teach basic skills, utilize students' strengths, interests, and experiences in the world. I soon learned that there was a great difference between studying about things and studying the things themselves, between book instruction and the illumination of practical experience. So this is an example of what I've done with my students. I take a simple concept, like the far left, the top left picture. We were studying African knowledge and action for sustainable development, but they had to go out and research it themselves. How can we account for sustainable development in our society, in our community? And then they had to create their own invention and present it in front of a panel. I also created a math fair, again, because the boys told me they loved it. And what they had to do is take a topic that I've taught them in social studies and in history and formulate a mathematical question, investigate it, and do the test, run the test. And these are 7th graders. And they're doing calculus, and they're doing, architecture, doing all sorts of high-level mathematics that you may not think or expect a 7th grader to be able to do, but they're doing it. Architecture, ballistics, trajectory and velocity. That young man right there wanted to do bullets, and I'm really against violence, but I had to sleep on it and say, okay, he really wants to do this. He's interested in it. He's not a violent student or anything like that, and I didn't want to take that learning opportunity away from him, so I did let him do it, and it was phenomenal. And again, they chose something that they were interested in. Culturally relevant teaching, pedagogy that empowers students intellectually, socially, emotionally, and politically by using cultural philosophies to impart knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Empowering students gives them the motivation and purpose they need to succeed academically and behaviorally. Develop a strong emotional ego to challenge racist societal views of competence and worthiness. That's my little girl, she won science fair. She's not a black boy, but I just put her in there. Okay, and so here are some stats for our school, Howard University Middle School of Mathematics and Science. This was the DC CAS test that we took in April. And these are our scores. And Caucasian, we don't have any Caucasian students in our school. This data came from IC. These are the Caucasian students in all of DC. So in reading, we're at 76% proficiency and advanced. Caucasians, 88%. Mathematics, we're at 88%. These are boys. 88% proficient and advanced. Caucasian, 90%. And it is projected based on our data that we will beat or surpass Caucasians in 2 years in mathematics. And we have 47.5% African American males in our school. And this is the big point right here. 70% of our school is free and reduced lunch. So we are number 4 in Washington, D.C. for middle schools, but the 3 that top us have 6% free and reduced lunch. And so when they come to us, they are 2 to 3, sometimes 4 grade levels behind. And we give them a holistic approach. So we take care of everything about them so that they can succeed. And by the time, this is 8th grade, by the time they're in 8th grade, we've pushed them as close as we can. And so it's projected that we will surpass. Monitor and assess students' needs and address them with a wealth of diverse strategies. We have Saturday school, we have homework scholars hall, we have before school tutoring, we do home visits. We offer our students an abundance of supports. And this is the LEAP schools data. They are in orange, and this is their past percentages, math percentages, and they too are surpassing, well, not they too, but they are surpassing state scores and Providence scores. And in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, I'm going to close it up with this. In the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Paulo Freire defines freedom as a struggle for humanization. He says that humanization is thwarted by injustice, exploitation, oppression, and the violence of oppressors. Humanization is affirmed by the yearning of the oppressed for freedom and justice, and by their struggle to recover their lost humanity. Once humanity is reclaimed spiritually, socially, emotionally, culturally, and academically, our young boys become free and they soar. And that is it. Thank you. Okay, so are there any questions for me? Yes.
What school typically does your students, when they leave the middle school, where do they go then? And have y'all been able to track them since they left middle school?
Yes, I've been in charge of tracking. And so after they leave us, our students go on to the top schools in DC. So they go to Banneker, School Without Walls. This year, I don't know if you're familiar with Sidwell Friends, that's where Obama's children go. They put out an article in the newspaper that this was the first year they had accepted as many students as they had from one public school. And they accepted 8 of our students, full rides to Sidwell, and that had never been done. And the year before, they accepted one of our students, Afia Tyus. And she came back and told us when she first got to school, the kids and the teachers all told her, you know, don't even think about it, you're not gonna get higher than a B in any of these classes. And she said, I don't think you know where I came from. And she knocked them out the park. So because of Afia, she's like an exceptional, brilliant child. But because of Afia, Sidwell loves our school. She's like our ambassador. So, but all of our students are brilliant. But they go on to Gonzaga, St. Albans, Edmund Burke, my alma mater. They have 4 of our students. and just all sorts of schools. And then McKinley Tech as well, and other schools in the area, but they all come back. Now, during the years that they're there, they can't stand us, right? You know, I don't like you, too much work. But then they come back, and they're like, we're doing stuff you did with us in 6th grade. You know, so it's kind of easy for